fellow bookworms to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and I have a really fun video for you guys today. We are going to be doing Reread, Rewrite, or Burn, which of course is based on the game. I think it's Kiss, Marry, or Kill, something like that. And I originally saw this done on the channel Honest Fiction, which of course will be linked down below. I saw her do this and I thought it sounded like so much fun. And of course, I'm celebrating my booktube birthday this month, so I've been trying to sprinkle in some really fun videos, and this is definitely one that I wanted to do. I also recently completed my Nora Roberts collection, so I knew that I wanted to do this with some Nora Roberts books. I decided to go with series just because some of her standalones I'm not quite as familiar with. They're either not as fresh in my mind because it's been a while since I read them, or I haven't read them at all. Where her series books I'm more familiar with, I enjoy them more, I tend to have reread them more often. So that's what we're doing, and it worked out really nicely. I was able to pull 21 series, which means we're going to be doing 9 rounds. There was a couple others, but they're more put together based on theme than actual like series books. So I didn't worry about those. There are two that are a little bit more loose, I guess. I have the Night Tales series, which are do have characters in common, but are more easily read as standalones. And then I have the Once Upon books that she did with 3 other authors, but she also published just her versions, the stories that she did into a little collection. And so I included that as well just to kind of round out what I needed to do. And they're all very similar in theme and feel. So even though they can be read as standalones too, I thought they worked well and would go well with this game. So I'll go ahead and run through the series that I have, and then we'll jump right in. So I did the Born In Trilogy, which of course is 3 books, the Dream Trilogy, the Calhoun Women, which is 5 books, the Donovan Legacy is 4 books, the Chronicles of the One is a trilogy, the Bride Quartet, of course, is 4 books, the Cousins O'Dwyer is a trilogy, the Guardians trilogy, the In Spoonsboro trilogy, Irish Hearts also is a trilogy, the MacKade Brothers is 4 books, the Chesapeake Bay Saga is 4 books, the Circle Trilogy, the Cordinia's Royal Family, which is 4 books, um, the Gallaghers of Ardmore trilogy, the Indy Garden trilogy, the McGregors has 11 books, Night Tale series has 5 books, the Key trilogy, the O'Hurleys has 4 books, the Stalinskis is how I pronounce it. That's not how you pronounce it, but it has 6 or 8 books depending on how you look at it, which I'll talk more about when I get to that one. And let's see, Stars of Mithra is a trilogy, the Sign of Seven trilogy, Three Sisters Island trilogy, Time Duology, so only 2 books there, Loving Jack trilogy, and then the Once Upon series has 6 books. So those are the 21 series. Like I said, we're going to do 9 rounds. Let's go ahead and jump right in because this video is probably going to be longer. Of course, before I do, if you could go ahead and give this video a like, it really does help out the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on a thing. So I'm just shaking my little owl here. And so we have all the things in here. And I'll kind of move them around with my fingers. And let's see what we get first. So we got 1, 2, and 3. So let's start with the first one I pulled. So the Dream Trilogy. So right here. And I'll talk about them in a second. So we got the Dream Trilogy, then we got Born In Trilogy. Oh, that's going to be hard because I really enjoyed both of those. And then we have, the Once Upon series. So let's go ahead and grab those. Of course, we'll start with the Dream Trilogy. So this one I have read a lot. I've reread it multiple times. This is the complete trilogy. So you have Daring to Dream, Holding the Dream, and Finding the Dream. This basically follows 3 women who are basically raised like sisters. You have Margot, who was the housekeeper's daughter, but the family, treated her like family, which created some issues because her mom was really strict. She's Irish, and she, believes you don't step out of your place. So she was really always hard on Margot, and so she was kind of caught in the middle between the Templeton's love and then her mom, like, no, you can't do that because you're the help, essentially. Then you have Kate, who was orphaned, and so the Templetons bring her in and raise her, and then as an adult, she ends up really struggling. She gets accused of embezzlement, which creates, obviously a lot of stress for her and whatnot. And then you have Laura, who is my favorite, and she learns she's the Templeton's actual daughter, but she learns her husband has been having an affair, and so she kind of starts over and decides she wants to do it without the family money, essentially. So that is the Dream Trilogy. Then you have the Born In Trilogy, which again, I have all three books here in this collection. So you have Born in Fire, Born in Ice, and Born in Shame. And this follows three sisters. One is a half sister. So Maggie's the oldest sister, and she was born and conceived when her parents' relationship was still passionate, fiery, and such. And then you have Brianna, who was born basically out of marital duties. They didn't have any love for each other anymore, and that's how she was conceived and born. And then their father had an affair, which resulted in Shannon, their half sister. And so Shannon comes over and is trying to get to know them based on her mother's last wishes. And, of course, them finding love in the process as well. So, this one is another one I really, really enjoyed. Of course, it takes place in Ireland, which is a lot of fun. And I just really enjoyed this series as a whole as well. And then we have the Once Upon series, which I just grabbed both books. So, like I said, she did this with three other authors. I recently got all of those, but she released the stories that she did from those books into A Little Magic and A Little Fate. And so you have Spellbound, Ever After, and Dreams, and then The Witching Hour, Winter Rose, and A World Apart. And these are all kind of very whimsical, like otherworldly kind of feel to them. And it's been a while since I read these. I do remember really, really enjoying these. Um, but it has been quite a while since I reread them. And so I can't fully remember what the stories are about, but I know like one you have like an enchanted like sorcerer, um, somebody needs to come break the spell. I just remember really, really enjoying these and like that whimsical feel. I could kind of picture like the landscape, like it's snowy and wintry and such of one of the stories. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed this. So let me see here what is going to happen. I think reread, I would have to go with Lovers and Dreamers just because I have reread this so many times. And I really like said specifically the relationships. Margot ends up dating the Templeton son, but of course because of her past and such, she really kind of struggles with that. And then Laura's story in particular, like I like Kate too. She's had it rough, but I can't really remember her love interest. But Laura, she ends up dating her brother's old childhood friend, which I love his character, and I just really enjoy Laura. So this would be the one I would reread for sure. And as far as rewrite goes, oh, I'm gonna have to go with the Once Upon books, just because I really remember enjoying these. Like I remember the atmosphere still stands out to me, even though I can't fully remember because it's been so long since I read these. Um, I would rewrite them because I would want more depth to them. I probably don't remember the characters and such as well because obviously they're little novellas, so there's not as much depth to them. So I would rewrite these, which means unfortunately the Born In trilogy would get burned. So I really, really enjoyed these, but they are kind of more like strictly romance, which Lovers and Dreamers is too, like the Dream Trilogy is too, but the characters from that one I just connected to and enjoyed a little bit more than the characters from this one. I particularly liked Brianna because she was kind of shy and reserved, and Grayson, had to kind of work to get her out of her shell a little bit. Where Maggie, I didn't really connect to, and kind of the conflict between her and Shannon, like she wasn't as open to Shannon as like Brianna was, and so there was a lot of conflict between them, and so I just didn't enjoy that quite as much, which is why this one's gonna have to be burned, unfortunately. So there is those. Let's go ahead and pick our next three. Shake them up again. So we got 1, 2, and 3. So let's see what we got here. So we have the time duology. Then we have the O'Hurleys. And finally, we have the Three Sisters Island trilogy. Oh, this is hard. So I guess let's start over here. So we have the time duology, which is time was and times change. So you have Caleb Hornblower, and he gets stranded in the present, but he's of course from the future, and he falls in love with Liberty, which makes him not want to return to the future because he wants to stay with her. So then you have in the second one Jacob Hornblower, which is Caleb's brother, and he comes back to try to get his brother, and bring him back to the future, of course. But then he falls in love with Liberty's sister, Sunny. So I really enjoyed this one because the time travel aspect and whatnot, I thought this was a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've reread it, but I have reread it on a couple occasions, and I just remember really, really enjoying this one. Then we have the O'Hurleys, which of course has 4 books in the series, and so you have 4 siblings, and they were basically, if I remember right, raised as kind of entertainers, and so 2 of the siblings end up, growing up and continuing to be entertainers, and then you have one who kind of retires from the spotlight and just wants to live a quiet life, and then you have the other one, Trace, who like basically goes off on his own and kind of cuts ties. Like he still loves his sisters, but he kind of cuts ties with the family. And I do remember I really liked Abby, which is the one that kind of leaves the spotlight and just wants to be on her own. And I did like Trace's story as well. I mean, I enjoyed all the O'Hurleys, but those two kind of stand out, especially Abby's story, because she just wants kind of a quiet life and whatnot. So yeah, you have that sibling aspect, and again, probably one of my favorite of her family series. I really did enjoy the O'Hurleys. So we have that one, and then we have the Three Sisters Island, which is another one that I really, really enjoy. This is a really hard round for me. So this one, you have these women, and 2 of them grew up on Three Sisters Island, and one kind of comes. She's on the run from an ex, and so she's kind of in hiding, um trying to change her appearance, and so that way he can't find her. I think she fakes her own death and whatnot, and her love interest is the town sheriff, so of course she wants to trust him, but because he's the sheriff, she's not sure how much she can trust him. And there's also have magical powers, like she learns about her magical powers and such. And then you have conflict between the other two, Mia and Ripley, I want to say. They grew up together, but Mia's always has embraced her powers and whatnot, where Ripley has always suppressed them. Like she wants to have nothing to do with them. And you also have the elemental magic there. So you have air, earth, and fire. And then there's Mia's love interest. He represents the 4th element of water. So these ones again, I've read them multiple times and I really, really enjoyed all three of these. So now we gotta make the hard choice. Um, oh. Let's see. I think I'm gonna reread the Three Sisters Island trilogy. It has such good atmosphere and kind of, especially the first book where she's kind of on the run from her ex and such. Like there's kind of this atmosphere that goes with it. And I think if I remember right, this one has the bookstore cafe. And I just really, really enjoyed it. And this also has a kind of bookish, like nerdy character, which I love. There's several of these books from her series that have a character like that, and I love each and every one of them. Like they I fall in love with each one of them. So I think, like I said, this one's gonna be the reread for me. And then we're going to go rewrite time and again, just because I like the time travel aspect of this one. And I would rewrite it and I would include more from the future, I think. I would like to see more of their kind of lives in the future. And so that's why I would rewrite this one. I'm not sure how that would be included. Maybe she could do like a follow up on it or something like that. But yeah, I would rewrite this one. And so that means the O'Hurleys are going to be burned, which, I mean, of course, I would never burn any books, but this one kind of hurts a little bit because I really did enjoy their stories. Um, but I just enjoy the other two. I enjoy like the magical aspect and the time travel aspect a little bit more. If this hadn't been paired against those two, it might have survived, but unfortunately, it didn't. So there are those three. Let's go ahead and move on to round three now. So we got one, two, and three. All right. So the first one I pulled out was Chronicles of the One. So that's the first one. And then we have the one I mispronounced. I pronounced it the Stalinskis. Ah. So, which of course is not how it's pronounced, which is another family series. And then you have the Loving Jack trilogy. So, there's that one as well. So the Chronicles of the One is probably the most recent series I've read. I actually read this with my husband. And so this is kind of a dystopian dark fantasy romance trilogy. And it is so good. I really enjoyed this one. My favorite was this one. This one follows Lana and Max, and they're the parents of the One. So basically, something happens and sets off the doom, which basically wipes out entire populations of people. And then what is left, you kind of have three different factions essentially. You kind of have the normal people, which you have the raiders who just try to take whatever they can. Of course, you're always going to have that. And then you have like the religious fanatics who are trying to snuff out the other factions, but they're kind of working with one of them. So then you have the people who, when the doom came, they developed magic. Like some of them turned into fairies and shapeshifters, and some of them, gained powers and such. And so, of that, you have light and dark magic. And the religious fanatics actually end up working with the dark magic people, and are basically capturing and killing, the light magic. Um, and so then you have the one who is fated to be able to destroy the doom and get rid of it essentially. So like I said, this first one follows Lana and Max, who are actually the parents, and so it's the beginning of the doom and such, and um that first year. So this was really, really enjoyable, and I liked it because I also read it with my husband. So there's that one. Then we have the Stalinskis, which are here. Um, and so this is another family series that she has done, and they're Ukrainian. And this one has 6 to 8 books, depending on how you look at it. The first four are kind of like siblings. The next two are Natasha and Spence's children, and then the final two don't aren't actually part of the family, but you have, so they're a duology, and you have reflections, and the daughter from that um goes, and there's characters in her story from Considering Kate, which is one of the Stalinsky books. So this one, you kind of have like they do ballet, and again you have that kind of that family tie. Like not all of them do ballet. Like Mikhail Stalinsky is, like a worker. um and I don't remember quite what he does, but anyway, so you just basically have a family series, and they're just following their different love stories essentially. But I do like the ones that have kind of that ballet element, and I especially like the Reflections and Dreams, which is the one that's not actually part of the series but is connected to it. And then we have the Loving Jack trilogy, which is somewhere. It's right here. And so this one is fun. This one you have Loving Jack, so you have romance writer Jackie McNamara and Nathan Powell, who again has kind of like a construction type business. And then you have his business partner, or works for him somehow. They're connected. They work together. His story is in Best Laid Plans, but she also did Lawless, which is the story Jackie McNamara was writing in Loving Jack, and I love that connection. And Lawless is one of my favorite books from her. It's kind of this historical romance, and so that was like key for me, which makes this hard because of that. This moves up a little bit higher. So I'm gonna say reread. I'm gonna go with the Chronicles of the One. I just love this so much, and definitely want to reread it for sure. And I don't think I could improve on this series at all. Like it is done so well, and I like I said, it has kind of that dark fantasy but dystopian feel at the same time. Like really, really good. So that one I'm gonna reread. Rewrite. I'm gonna have to go Love by Design, just because of Lawless. I love Lawless, and I wish Lawless was a little bit longer, honestly. Like, if I wish there was a little bit more depth to it. So that's why I would rewrite this one, this series. But I really, really liked Lawless. Otherwise, that one would probably get burned. Even though I enjoyed the other stories, they're not as memorable to me. But Lawless really stands out, which which means another family series has to go on the burn pile, which I really love the series, and I particularly liked the one that's just kind of companion to this family series. I love Reflections and Dreams, but I do like Considering Kate and Waiting for Nick, which are the children of Natasha and Spence. Like those two stand out to me as well. Um, this hurts again. Again, it just was pitted against other ones that I just enjoy a little bit more than the family series. But if it wasn't for Lawless, this one would have been the rewrite for sure. So that is those three. Let's go ahead and move on to round four. Okay. So we got 1, 2, and 3. So let's see what I pulled first here. Okay, so we got the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. Then we have the Sign of Seven trilogy. And lastly, we have Stars of Mithra trilogy. So the Cousins O'Dwyer. Oh, that's a good one too. Let me try to not knock all my books over here. Okay, so this is hard too. Cousins O'Dwyer, you basically have of course they're cousins, but Iona is the one, she's from America and kind of has a different parents, so she ends up going to Ireland to find her roots and family connection and such and meets her cousins. But there's kind of this curse that has been on the family, and so they end up having to work together to break this curse essentially. But what I really like about this is there's dual timelines, so you go back to the past where the curse was originally placed on like these three siblings, and and so their family line, and it's been through their family line they have connection to the siblings from the past. And there's animal sidekicks. So Iona is a horse, and then you have a hawk, and then you have a hound. And it's just really, really an enjoyable series for sure. The Sign of Seven, which is another one, very, very, very dark fantasy. But basically, you have these three boys, and they go out and they become blood brothers, but when they do that, they actually end up unleashing a demon. So every 7 years, the town they live in of Hawkins Cove just goes crazy. Like the townspeople try to kill each other, and it's just chaos and craziness. And so three women end up coming to town, and they're kind of fated to work with the brother, or with the three guys who are blood brothers, so not actual brothers, to try to stop this demon. And they have blood ties to the demon, where the three in the three men have blood ties to the ones that originally contained the demon. And it is dark, it's very creepy. This one stands out to me as one of the ones that gave me the most creeps out of all her like dark fantasy type books. But still really, really enjoyable. And then we have the Stars of Mithra, which basically you have the Stars of Mithra, which are three huge blue diamonds. And so you have just different women who have these diamonds, and then the men are kind of like, you have like a detective, you have a PI, you have a bail bondsman, like the one that the bounty hunter. Um, and they kind of get pulled in to these women and what's going on with these diamonds and such. I read one of these. The other two are vaguely familiar, but I'm not entirely sure if I read them or not because I did not have the books, but I might have rented them from the library and read them. I can't fully remember. Um, but yeah, so that's this one. It is kind of fun. You have the gems, and of course, it's adventurous and whatnot because there's kind of that mystery behind the gems. So as far as reread, oh, I'm gonna have to go the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. I really like that dual timeline. I love the animal sidekicks, of course, and there's just nothing I would change about this trilogy at all. I love it. So, gonna have to go with that one. Rewrite. I'm gonna have to go with Blood Brothers. Um, This one was so good, but it is very, very creepy, which is kind of the point. But I don't know. Like, I might have changed that. I haven't reread it because it still kind of just creeps me out. I mean, I think I've reread it a couple times, but it's not one that I look at on my shelves and go, oh yeah, I want to go back to that atmosphere and such. But it's kind of the point. Like, the atmosphere is meant to be that way. So I'm not really sure how I would change that, but that one would be the one I would rewrite. which means the stars of Mithra would get burned, which isn't really fair to it because I'm not entirely sure if I read two of these books. But it's just not as fun. Like, I like that fantasy element and that family element, whether it's found or real or not, and you just don't really have that with this one. So that's why that one's going to go into the burn pile. So there is that. Can't remember which round. I think we're on round 5 now. So let's see what we get here. So we got 1, 2, and we're getting stuck together 3. So let's see. The first one we have is the MacKade brothers. Then we pulled the Guardians trilogy. And last we have, ooh, this is hard, the Bride Quartet. Okay. So the MacKade brothers. This is a fun one. It's another kind of family-based one. You have 4 brothers, Rafe, Jared, Devin, and Shane MacKade, and they're kind of wild and a bit unruly. And yeah, so that's kind of it's about them, and of course their love interest, which you have Rafe, who ends up coming back. He's kind of a bit of the more wild of the 4. And so he leaves, he ends up coming back. You have Jared, who I believe becomes like an attorney, so he kind of goes onto the straight and narrow. You have Devin, who becomes like the sheriff. His is my favorite because his love interest is like um an old like childhood sweetheart that he had a crush on, and who was in a bad marriage, and so he kind of struggles with, wanting to be with her, but also not wanting to take advantage of her or push her too hard or anything like that because she just got out of a bad relationship. And then Shane is like the ultimate bachelor type. So yeah, just really, really fun. There's moments from this series that really stand out in my mind. But that's that one. And then you have the Guardians trilogy, which is this one here is the first one in the series, and so this one I'll go ahead and read the little synopsis because it's easier. So, to celebrate the rise of their new queen, 3 goddesses of the moon created 3 stars, one of fire, one of ice, one of water. But when they fell from the sky, putting the fate of all the worlds in danger, uh, they fell from the sky, putting the fate of all the worlds in danger. And now 3 women and 3 men join forces to pick up the pieces. This is so good. So yeah, you have this group of people, and they're having to work together to try to find and restore the stars. And so you have like a seer and a sorcerer, like, or a magician, and then you have a mermaid and a time traveler and such. And it's just a lot of fun. And I love like the atmosphere of these books. Like, really, really, really good trilogy for sure. And then you have the Bride Quartet. This is another one. I've reread this so many times. There's no like fantasy element or anything. It's just a good solid romance. And this follows 4 women, and they were childhood friends. They used to play pretend wedding all the time. They grow up and they end up starting a wedding planning business with each other. And each one has like a specific role. And so like think of this one, it's Mac, and she's a photographer. She takes pictures and such. And then you have one that does like the flowers and the decorating, and the one that does the cakes and like the little desserts and such. And then you have the one that kind of puts everything together and is the one that's dealing with the clients and is basically the event planner type. And it's just really, really heartwarming, and you have this connection between the 4 women, which is really enjoyable, along with their love interest. And then it also, again, has kind of this nerdy professor type character, which always pulls my heartstrings. And so, yeah, that is that one. So, um, oh, I'm gonna have to go with the Bride Quartet as a reread. I love these characters so much. It's just heartwarming. It's not as fantasy based or anything like that, so you don't have all the craziness that goes along with that you need to kind of keep track of or anything like that. It's just very, very heartwarming, and there's those strong connections. It's not just about falling in love and whatnot. You have that friendship and those connections with between the women as well. So that's gonna be my reread. I'm gonna have to rewrite the Guardians trilogy. I just really, really like the atmosphere of that. Some of the characters are similar to some of the characters in some of her other kind of fantasy books. So that's the only reason I would rewrite that. Maybe I mean the mermaid's unique, but you do have like some time traveler elements and whatnot. Like you have like them that fill a slot in some of the other series. So that's the only reason this one would be a rewrite. It'd probably be reread if it wasn't up against the Bride Quartet, because I love the atmosphere and I do love the characters, especially Annika the mermaid is my favorite. So that one's going to be, like I said, a rewrite, which means the MacKade brothers are going to be burned, which is a shame because I really did enjoy them. I just again, like these family, they just come up against like little fantasy based or whatever, and they just can't quite hold their own. So unfortunately, the MacKade brothers are going to be burned, even though I do really, really enjoy them. So let's go ahead and go on to our next round, which I believe is round 6 now. So we got 1, 2, and 3. All right. So first up, we have the Night Tales series. Then we have Irish Hearts, which is also a trilogy. And lastly, we have, oh man, the Chesapeake Bay Saga. This is really hard. This one's hard. This hurts me a little bit. So Night Tales. This one is kind of like crime, like late at night, spooky vibes, and kind of like a police feel or detective feel to it, based on like the characters. These you can read as standalones, but there's connection between the characters based like they work together, they're both police officers and work together or something like that. There are those little connections. I think one's the daughter of the police chief and whatnot from one of the other books and things like that. So they do all kind of tie in together, even though they could easily be read as standalones. And yeah, they're just enjoyable, like late night reads. They have that late night atmosphere, a little bit, not really like fully creepy, but and it's not like supernatural creepy. It's more like real hidden dangers and such. Like the first one, she is a late night radio host and she's getting like these obscene calls and such. And then you have the second one, which is Nemesis, and he walks in the dark alleyways alone, a shadow among shadows. And then he ends up saving Deborah. And so, yeah, this one's fun. Um, it's very kind of different vibes from her other books. And like I said, they're perfect for like late night reading and such if you just kind of want that atmosphere and whatnot. Then we have Irish Hearts, which Irish Thoroughbred was her very first novel. And so I like this. You have the Irish connection, but instead of going to like American going to Ireland, you have an Irish woman coming to America. And so you have Adelia, and she is working for her uncle, who's a horse trainer at Royal Meadows. And there she ends up falling in love with Travis Grant, who's the stable owner. And then her cousin comes over, and you have Logan, who won his ranch and through gambling and whatnot. So she kind of just misjudges him, and then you have Travis and Adelia's daughter in the next one, And so this is a solid, like very, very solid trilogy. Really, really enjoyable. You have the horses, which of course I love. And then you do have the Irish connection and whatnot. Um, but it takes place in America, so it's kind of a flip on like some of her other ones that are tied to Ireland. So really, really enjoyable. And then the one that started my obsession, of course, is the Chesapeake Bay Saga. And so I pulled the first one, which is Seaset. And so you have these brothers, but they were all adopted. And so it's kind of a found family type situation. They're all come from troubled past and have their own little issues. And the three older brothers, they end up having to raise the fourth brother because he's the fourth one their dad took in before he died. That's like his last wish is that they take care of Seth. But Seth has kind of this secret history that comes into play later. And absolutely love this one. This is an easy one for me. Definitely rereading the Chesapeake Bay saga. Like, there is no doubt about that. Because I absolutely love this one. I've reread it multiple times. It's still a favorite. I mean, it kind of has that nostalgia factor because it's what I started with, but definitely rereading that one, which means this is hard, but I'm gonna rewrite Irish Heart. It is her first novel, and so there could be like a little bit more depth, like a little bit more refinement to it, I guess. Not really depth, but just refinement. Obviously, the more you do, the better you get. So this one, I would say rewrite, which means the Night Tales is gotta go to the burn pile, which I hate because they're different from her other ones. Like, the vibes are very different, um, and they definitely have their place. But against the other two, like, they this just didn't have a chance, unfortunately. So that one has got to go. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and go on to the next round. Let's check out one, two, and three. So first we got the Circle Trilogy. Then we got in the Garden Trilogy. This is gonna be a hard one too. And last we got, oh man, this is a hard round. The Gallaghers of Ardmore Trilogy. Oh, this is hard. This is really hard. Okay. So the Circle Trilogy. This one I had actually completely forgotten about, and then I was rereading it, and I was like, "How did I forget this one? This one's so good." Again, kind of a dark fantasy, but it's amazing. Like, the atmosphere, the vibes of it. So you have Hoyt, and he's a sorcerer, and his brother ends up getting bitten and turned into a vampire by Lilith. And so you have Morgan, who is a goddess, and she calls upon Hoyt and tells him he needs to gather five others to form the Circle of Six and defeat Lilith and the evil that she's spreading throughout the world. And so you have Mora, who is a queen from another like realm, essentially. You have Hoyt, who's a sorcerer, his brother Cyan, who is the vampire. You have a warrior who's a demon slayer. You have a shapeshifter, Larkin, and then you have another witch, and it is just so good. I absolutely love this trilogy. It is amazingly written and it is wonderful. Then you have In the Garden Trilogy, which has such good vibes as well. It's a little bit more like magical realism. Not really magic, it has a supernatural aspect. And so you have the Harper House and basically, what's her name? It starts with the R, I forget. Um but you have the older, like, you have three generations. Roz, I think, is her name, and she is a Harper, and they've always lived in the Harper house. And she ends up starting in the garden, which is a nursery. And so you have her, you have Stella, who is like her manager and has is a widow with 2 or 3 young boys, and then you have Haley, who has family ties, like distant family ties to Roz, and she's kind of pregnant, about to pop, and down on her luck, and so she ends up coming. But the big thing, obviously it's about these women and 3 generations of women. Roz is in her late 40s, Stella's like 30s, and Haley's like 20s. Um, so you have 3 generations of women, and of course they're finding love, which I like Roz's because she's older and she's still able to find love again. And her love interest is another like professor nerdy type guy who I absolutely love. But the big one with this one is you have the Harper Bride, who has that supernatural element, and she, sings lullabies. But the problem comes when she gets upset because these women are finding love and she feels like she has to protect the children, and so she starts becoming aggressive, and so they have to learn who the Harper Bride is and why she's so upset, essentially. Really, really good. And then you have the Gallaghers of Ardmore, which is right here. Couldn't find it for a second. So this one, you have 3 cousins, and they run a pub over in Ireland. And there is kind of this curse. There's this ghost where 2 of the characters from this end up staying. You have Jude Francis, who comes from America again to try to find her roots, and she falls in love with one of the cousins. But when the house she's staying at has this ghost, and you have Carrick, Prince of Fairies, who that's his love, and so he is trying to get these couples together to basically break the curse so he can have his love, essentially. And again, the atmosphere is so amazing, so good, and this is really, really hard. This is a hard one. I think this is the hardest round yet. um oh man, I'm gonna have to go with reread the Circle trilogy. This is just so amazing. Um, like a little bit under the radar, but when you read it, like it's just chef's kiss for sure. So this one's gonna be my reread. Rewrite, I'm gonna have to go with the In the Garden trilogy again. Could just be a little bit more refined, but I don't know. There's the Harper Bride story, like it kind of, the nursery and then this, like you could almost have 2 separate stories, which I think is why I would rewrite this one. But the Harper Bride just, I mean, I love that plot line of these books. Like it's absolutely amazing. Which means another one that is kind of more family based has to go, even though this is also kind of more fantasy based too. But as much as I enjoyed this one, it is kind of similar to some of her other ones, and the other 2 just beat it out, unfortunately. So that is those 3. I know this video is very long, but I wanted to do them all together. So let's see what we got now. So we got 1. We're almost there. I think we got 2 more rounds. 2 and 3. So let's see what we got here. So we got the Calhoun women. Then we have Cordinia's royal family. And lastly in this round, we have the Inns Boonesborough. Okay. So this is hard too. So we got the Calhouns, which is 4 sisters and 1 sister-in-law, and they have this old mansion up on the rocky coast of Maine, and it's home to a decades-old legend, hidden emeralds, about hidden emeralds. And so basically, this one, you not only have kind of the storyline, they're renovating and turning their mansion into kind of like a bed and breakfast, like hotel, like not fully a hotel, but more like bed and breakfast type place. And then there also is the mystery of finding these emeralds and learning about them. And you have another kind of nerdy, bookish type character who I absolutely love, Max. Um, Again, just something about those type of characters just really makes me fall in love with them. So, but yeah, you have these women, and their kind of family home, and then the missing emeralds, and so you have kind of that aspect of searching for something and the hidden secrets and family secrets and such, which is always enjoyable. Then we have Cordinia's royal family. And so this one, again, you have the royal family, you have three siblings, and then the fourth book is Gabriella and Reeve's daughter, and she ends up just needing to get away from royal life and going kind of undercover. But this is pretty enjoyable. I particularly like Gabriella and Reeve's story, which Gabriella is kidnapped and then she has amnesia, and Reeve is hired to protect her, and then of course they fall in love. And then their daughter's story, going undercover and just kind of being a normal girl. Um, and there's kind of a twist in that one that I really enjoyed. The other two are enjoyable too. You have Prince Alexander and Prince Bennett rather, and yeah, they're enjoyable too. But I really like the first and the last stories of the series. And then we have the Inns Boonesborough, which is another great one. So this one you have the Montgomery brothers and their quirky mother, but they end up buying the Inns Boonesborough and want to renovate and restore it. Um, and the Inns Boonesborough is haunted. So it's a historic haunted hotel that they're renovating and restoring, and they own like a construction type business. And then of course they end up falling in love. But I love the supernatural and like kind of that historical aspect of this one. Really, really good. So I think out of the three, I'm going to reread this one because I really like the atmosphere of it. Again, you kind of it's not really magical, but supernatural realism. Um, it's just really enjoyable. There's one scene that really stands out in my mind from the series, and I just like the ghosts here. I like ghost stories, like historical places that have a ghost. I absolutely love it. So this one's gonna be reread. Rewrite, I'm gonna go with the Calhoun women. Again, you have kind of that family history and that mystery. I can't remember if there's a supernatural aspect to this one. I don't think so. But you do have like that mystery of the emeralds and such, and trying to solve that, which I always really really enjoy. The turning it into a hotel again, you kind of have that similar theme, or bed and breakfast. Could care less about that. Although it does play into kind of the storyline for a couple of these characters. So that's really, really enjoyable. Which means the royal family has got to go to the burn pile, and it's just the two brothers' stories aren't very memorable to me at all. Um, and yeah, just compared to the other two, I would much rather pick up them than this book. So I know this video's long, but we are finally on to the last set of books. So I'll go ahead and just pull out all three of these slips of paper here and show you what they are. So we have, of course, the McGregors, which is a family series. Then we have the Key Trilogy. And lastly, we have the Donovan Legacy. I don't know that you caught that. There you go. And so let's see here. So the McGregors is her big family line. There's 11 books in this one. Um, the stories themselves don't really stand out. It's just them falling in love. But you do have Daniel, which is the patriarch of the family, and he's kind of meddlesome, and he's the one kind of pulling the strings, trying to make sure that his family is continuing to grow. And he, pulls the strings with his children, and then You have like the McGregor brides and the McGregor grooms, which is him pulling the strings with his grandchildren. I particularly like Daniel's story, and then you have two that kind of go back. So their ancestors. So you have Ian, who's a Minuteman, and then you have Serena McGregor, the original Serena McGregor, who's in Scotland in 17 something, and ends up marrying an Englishman, and that's kind of how it all starts. And so I really like those two like historical views of the family, but the rest of them kind of run together. But still, obviously, if you like big family series books, this one is a great one because it's a big family and they all kind of tie together. The Key Trilogy. So basically, with the Key Trilogy, I'm gonna try to pull out this one. You have so you have these daughters, these goddesses, and they each had a specific talent or gift. One is art or beauty, the other is knowledge or truth, and the third is courage or valor. A spell is cast on the daughters. The daughters' souls are stolen and locked in a glass box known as a box of souls, which can only be opened by 3 keys turned by human hands. If the quest is complete, the box of souls will be opened and the daughters of glass freed, and the 3 women would have a cool $1 million each. So that's the premise of this trilogy. I kind of have the box set here. And this one is really enjoyable. And so each one starts off, they get this invitation and they go up to this kind of spooky like mansion on a hill and such. And each character kind of represents each kind of the goddesses as far as their own personal like personality or what they do, kind of hobbies and such. So of course you have the key of light, which represents art or beauty, the key of knowledge, and then the key of valor. And this one, what I enjoyed about it is you do have this group of people and they're working together, but the burden falls on each one of the women. And so why the others can help her, that falls on her. Like that's her key. It's her responsibility to figure it out and such, which I like because it's a little bit different from the other ones. And I liked how the keys tied into each different things. So like you have art, you have books. I can't remember how the valor one quite played out, but really really enjoyable trilogy for sure. And then you have the Donovan legacy, which this is one kind of another family based but also fantasy based one. So you have the Donovans, and so you have Morgana Donovan, who's a self-proclaimed witch, and um, you have her love interest, Nash, who is using her to help research his latest screenplay, and then you have Sebastian Donovan, and he is helping Mary Ellen Sutherland to find a missing baby. Like, just kind of a theme of they have these powers, but people don't believe them. And in the other ones, there's 2 more. You have Anastasia, and she's been burned before, and so she's kind of hesitant to share her secret. And then something happens that she has to share it with the man she loves, but she's worried that she's gonna be, shunned again. And then the fourth one, you have, I forget his name, but he basically just wants to live on his own, and he like is a hermit and a recluse and doesn't interact with anybody. But these are really really fun, like family, but you also have kind of that witchy aspect there as well. So as far as which one's going to be which, reread, definitely going to be the Donovan Legacy, especially Anastasia, and the other one stand out to me, and so do these two. Like, all 4 of these books are amazing, and I really, really enjoyed them. So that's going to be my reread. As far as rewrite, oh, I'm gonna have to go rewrite the Key trilogy, just because again you have kind of that fantasy aspect. I liked how the different like traits played into the women themselves and how they were going to solve the mystery and find these keys. Like, I really like that and kind of that quest aspect. Really, really good, which means another family goes on the burn pile, and that is, of course, the McGregor family. There's just so many of these books, and the overall bulk of them don't really stand out to me. And so that's why they have to go onto the burn pile. So that is it. We finally got through the series. I know this was a long one, but I wanted to do them all together. And so if you stuck around this long, thank you. If you stuck around this long, leave a wolf emoji. It ties in somehow to the Donovan legacy, so leave a wolf emoji. I'll go ahead and leave you guys here though. Let me know what you thought of this game. If you're gonna give it a try, and definitely go check out Honest Fiction's channel, because that's where I got the inspiration. But I'll go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.